brief about
I first want to express my gratitude to Raziuddin Saab and the entire forum for organizing this very important discussion. I just want to divide what I want to say on the basis of 5 or 6 heads. One is the question of economic and social security. The other one is political representation. The other one, and finally, the whole issue is democracy and dissent. And within these 3 parameters, I'd like to say that unfortunately, we are at the crossroads just now, the rights, responsibilities, and vulnerabilities of the minorities. I think no seasoned democracy, no mature democracy, particularly a democracy that would like to call itself a power in the world, a large economic power, political power, military power, can even begin to exist without actually acknowledging that we are a very plural society in India, and that pluralism and diversity means we have to recognize what pluralism and the rights that have been given under our constitution. I'd also like to stress that when we talk about the word minorities, we don't always mean only religious minorities. There are also linguistic minorities, there are gender minorities, there are minorities within the religious and gender minorities. And I think it's very, very important that the minorities also understand these various dimensions of the word minority. Because I think that's when real pluralism and diversity and a diverse discourse and intersectionality between women, gender, Dalit, Pasmanda, Muslim, Christian, all of this comes in. So that is my first proposition. I think that there can be no question that the social and economic security of minorities is a grave issue today. It's a grave issue for many reasons, and I think many of them are historical. We need to also keep referring back to something called the Sector Committee report of 2005 and 2006. And it is true that even earlier dispensations did not really pay the kind of attention they should to the whole issue of the economic and social and political rights of minorities. And they negotiated, in fact, with a largely, and I think this is important, they negotiated with a largely religious and extremely conservative male Muslim leadership, male Christian leadership, and not actually try to engage with the community itself cross-sectionally. As a result of which the representation that you saw was not necessarily one that talked about democracy, talked about professionalism, talked about rights. And what emerged was, even when the Sector Committee came out, a politics of patronage rather than a politics of rights. And I think it's very important that the minority community be looked at, whether it's the religious minority, ethnic, linguistic, or gender, in terms of the language of rights which are granted to us under the Constitution, directive principles, etc. So I think it's very important to understand that there is a whole issue of the social and economic insecurity that minorities face. And I think one would also, I like to place on the table, at least I would like to place on the table, that despite the fact that till 2014 we had a series of governments, we had a blip in 1999 to 2004, which were broadly democratic and committed to constitutional values. The difference between the current dispensation and the one we had in 1999 to 2004, which was fortunately a minority government, was that inherently the ideology that it was fundamentally based on, I believe that the BJP is a parliamentary wing of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, was actually fundamentally anti-constitutional and anti-democratic. So when you have an ideology operating actually against the constitutional values of equality and non-discrimination, an ideology which has one of its books or 2 of its books which believes in second-class citizenship, which believes that the internal enemies of quote-unquote the dream Hindu Rashtra, the Hindu nation, are Muslims and Christians and communists, which means dissenters, then I think many things come into play. Then you have, say, the Sadhvi sitting in the Ministry of the Government of India. You have Sangeet Som, you have Balyan, you have Yati Narsinganan, who are kind of using positions of power to spout actually very hateful and violent ideologies, which are talking about exterminating people, etc. And I think, therefore, the difference between this dispensation, which is also in power in many, many states, I think 15 or 16 states, is what is very, very worrying for Indian democracy as a whole and for our minorities. So I think we need to argue that the social, economic, and political security of minorities is under really and particular threat today, though historically there has been a denial, as the Sector Committee report has shown, and Amitabh Kundu's report, which is a follow-up to Sector, has shown. that not enough policy initiatives, not enough affirmative action has been taken to reduce this gap of social and economic denial. So, for instance, the Sacha Committee pointed out, and so did the Amitabh Kundu report, that what we need actually is an equal opportunities law. What you need is adequate incentives for microfinance, MSMEs, and representation. You find the kind of ghettos under which minority, particularly Muslims, are forced to live, are denied things like basic civic amenities compared to other areas, and very much like some of the Dalit areas. So you're finding this very institutionalized discrimination at work. The other issue is political representation, and I think it's a very important issue. It's something that the progressive, secular, liberal left forces have, I think, not given adequate importance to, whether it's the Dalit issue, Dalit representation, or Muslim women, or Christian, or gender minority. I think the issue of political representation is a very crucial one for any democracy, and we need to look at it very, very closely. So that's the other issue. I also would like to mention that there is a very big challenge for the minorities in this country, Christian or Muslim particularly, which is addressing the intersectionalities within the community. And I've always said this, that I don't want to fight in elections, so I will mention uncomfortable things. But unless the Muslim community itself is able to tolerate dissenting voices, gender voices, who are challenging certain patriarchal and community norms within the community, and they must have a space. They are both Muslim and they are women. They are both Muslim and they are dissenters. They are both Muslim and they are non-believers. And they're looking at secular democracy in a way that maybe a very, very conservative, archaic religious clergy does not. And therefore, I think that is a challenge for the minority, to be able to deal with that dissenting voice within the community, which is saying that please have a certain attitude towards secular democracy, which is more forward-looking and more involving in the secularism and secularization process. So I think this is a challenge, and this is a challenge which is not spoken about enough. And I believe that one of the things that the Sacha Committee did not do was look at the question of the security. And I've had the misfortune of looking at least 28 or 29 Riot Commission reports since 1961, Jabalpur. And you find this institutionalized discrimination, you find bias in the police force, etc. But we also find that there are voices emerging from the largest religious minority, Muslims, and the Christian community, which is challenging some of the patriarchal and undemocratic notions that is spewed by the leaderships of those communities. And those need to be strengthened, those need to be supported, because these communities are not hegemonic at all. So whether it is a triple talaq issue, it's a very important thing that Sarja brought up, but of course in a typically perverted way. The whole triple talaq issue, the polygamy issue, the issue of halala, these issues have been flagged by secular democratic groups within the Muslim community, women within the Muslim community, and saying that saying that these are not Islamic practices, they are perversions which have been brought into the Indian Muslim community, where the Indian religious clergy is not condemning them. So therefore, we need to take a stand about them because they are oppressing our own women. Obviously, we oppose criminalization of triple talaq, where the Muslim man is criminalized. But I think because not enough steps were taken, you have a BJP, an extremely rapacious, aggressive, proto-fascist power, then taking the advantage and enacting the law. So I think these are challenges, real challenges we have. And I need to also say for a few minutes that, particularly because of the kind of things Ms. Ilmi said, which was so problematic, that just look at the climate in our country post-2014. It's of course we know what happened in 1984 with this. She never mentioned the Sikh community in Delhi. Of course we know about Delhi. We know about my city, Bombay, 92-93. We know Gujarat 1969 before 2002. And we know that the governments in power did not take adequate stands to punish the perpetrators or to take steps against institutionalized killings and discrimination. But Gujarat 2002 onwards took it to another level, complete another level. And this kind of, societal and institutionalized violence and the hate speech that we have seen being espoused from those in positions of power from the day the present Prime Minister took office, and the silence of the political leadership of the country when hate crimes take place is something that we need to take note of. We cannot not speak about that. And I think just since the day before yesterday, when we saw the victory in Uttar Pradesh, which has disturbed many of us all over again, we know that the bulldozer is today the metaphor for the victory. And, it is very convenient for the chief minister of the state to say we're talking about bulldozers against only one particular community's mafia. But anybody who knows Uttar Pradesh, and we work on the ground there, we work in Purvanchal, we have a team there, knows it was used particularly to threaten Muslim bastis and Muslim neighborhoods. We know what happened in 2017 when this party came to power in the state after several years, and the entire community of meat cutters and meat makers. I don't like viewers who butcher it as a particular connotation, were brutalized. We know the terror and intimidation that the community is living under, and therefore I would like to offer some hope. Though the victory has not been there, I'd like to say, and Mohib Saab and I, we've been talking every other day on WhatsApp, that while it is true that there's not been a victory for the secular parties, 80 seats up for the Samajwadi Party and a narrow loss in 60. Most importantly, 11 hate mongers, particularly from Western UP, and even the most atrocious one called Raghavendra Pratap Singh in Domariaganj have lost. Saida Khatun has won there. Many Muslim candidates have won under RLD and SP tickets. We have a representation of 36 Muslims in the Vidhan Sabha now under the present government. And it's going to be a huge challenge. The repression is going to increase. Already you have FIRs against protesters who have protested the lack of the election commission's impartial monitoring of the elections, and the repression will continue. So there's a huge challenge for us to kind of be able to respond to the crisis that faces the Indian Muslim community today, the Indian Christian community also. The Evangelist Fellowship has accounted for 300 attacks on the Christians last year. If you look at Assam and we look at the 19 lakh people who have been excluded from the NRC, another 2.2 lakhs have been excluded as D-voters and are called declared foreigners. So we're talking about 2.2 million, 22 lakh people who are living under the shadow of being called non-Indians. Not all are Muslim. Only about 27% are Muslim. The rest are Santhalis, Rajbanshis, Hindi speakers, etc. So of course, a political target of this kind of policy is the Muslim community. A constant patriotism tests are placed, etc. But eventually, when policies play out, the migrant labor, the working class, the OBC, the Dalit, the tribal, the Adivasi, all comes under attack. So I think the real challenge for us is to constantly forge these multiple identities and build these multiple alliances so that there is not this hegemonizing sense that only one minority is being attacked. I think this country, just like many other countries of the world, saw a huge tragedy last year when the COVID deaths took place, and those have been undercounted. Families have gone through huge distress. We are facing economic job losses and huge inflation. Growth is not happening because there's a wrong kind of growth, which is crony capitalism, which is missing. And this is affecting, of course, across the board, all Indians. But of course, it's affecting those sections among the minorities who are under the social and economic levels. And a large section of them are. So it's a huge challenge. The responsibilities, I would like to say, there's a huge responsibility on the Indian majority community to build programs for social cohesion and inclusion. And I think it's also a responsibility of the Muslim minority, Christian minority, Sikh minority, Adivasis, Dalits, to also move towards, by protecting their own rights and demanding their own share in the sun, also to build social programs of social cohesion. I'm open to answer any questions. I hope I'm not taking too much time. Thank you.
No, you have not taken much time. Actually, we wanted to hear more, but can you, because the format today was a little different, so I have to raise some questions for all, but later on the audience will also ask some questions.
Sure.
The prime problem is you have just seen one speaker saying all that. So, but there is a perception built on that ground. So how the Muslim community can really defend its association with secular parties when they become the target. And when they become the target, the secular parties really do not come to their defense that aggressively. So it is real problematic. They don't want to go to BJP because unlike the Shiv Sena alliance with the secularists, BJP is unwilling to do anything, any kind of gesture. So Muslims are bound to go to Congress or secular parties. But when they are bound to go to that, the reverse, the other side, who was getting their votes, is not coming very aggressively to protect them or to stand with them. So how this can be played and for how long? And in that scenario, out of frustration and all those things that come into play, what Muslims should really do at this juncture?
Actually, it's a very, very good question. And it's something that I've been grappling with for the last several years, but particularly over the last 3 days, because I've been talking, I've had at least 26 Zoom calls across with activists and friends in Uttar Pradesh. Many of them, 80% of them Muslim community leaders and people we work with very closely. And the same question is coming up that, if there is 88% of the of the UP Muslim has voted for the Samajwadi Party this time. And we know that Alig1 unfortunately did not become very active vis-a-vis the election till 4 months before. There were so many issues that the UP Musliman faced since 2017. Loss of livelihood, attacks, the CA protesters, false cases, demonization, hate speech. Where was Samajwadi Party at that time? It is a very valid question that they kept raising. And the feeling also that if we don't articulate this openly to the Samajwadi Party leadership, then what will happen there is really scary. Is like what happened in Gujarat. I watched Gujarat very closely. I know Gujarat since 1986, apart from the fact that my ancestors come from there, is that Muslim community has stopped voting. They have withdrawn. Not many of them can bring themselves to vote for the BJP. Some do, but I don't blame them at all. But the point is that many of them have just withdrawn from the process. And that is like, it's the success of the far right, which wants to invisibilize and completely marginalize the Muslim community in every way. So it is a frightening prospect. It is a very scary prospect. So I was just telling them, because many of the local level leadership, the MLAs who have won, the Muslim woman who has won, I said the civil society, people like us, activists, need to work with the political opposition and put pressure on them that you cannot afford to be silent. Because we are not ever going to take over the political role, but we need to push them that you need to form social justice cells, you need to form minority cells, you need to form women's cells, and you need to have a constant active voice. When we say proto-fascism, sir, when we say majoritarianism, this is what it does. It silences even the progressive forces from taking a stand. I mean, we saw, for instance, the kind of the language that the Congress and all started using when they should be. I mean, nobody wanted them to defend the regressive leadership among Muslims, but they could have taken a hard secular stand in Gujarat, nationally, etc. And if they had done so, I believe majority of Muslims would have supported them. Because I work very closely with the Muslim community. They don't want support for one Maulana or one silly statement. No, they want support for their economic rights and dignity. If that is supported, they will manage their religious affairs on their own. They're not interested in any state, this thing. But this whole image that has been created, that the Muslim wants this, the Muslim wants prayer, the Muslim wants namaz, the Muslim wants skycam, is also creation of how secular parties have dealt with a leadership which is not progressive, not modern thinking, not professors, not doctors, not activists, but they prefer to go to the religious leadership and the madrasa. So it's a difficult time we are living through, but I think we all have a role. And as activists on the ground, I think we cannot abdicate our role of putting pressure on the political opposition that it cannot be afford to be silent. Okay, it also needs to fight the election commission. I mean, the mockery that the institutions have become. Election commission is not taking independent stands. The opposition says a few things at the time of elections and then doesn't take the battle forward. So there's a lot of discomfort with the cadres. At least pick up 7, 8, 10 powerful cases and fight those cases out. You have the resources. You take them to court. Even if you win some of those cases, you'll be able to jolt the commission into some sort of response. But non-engagement is not the answer.
So last question for you, Teasta ji, is all those civil rights activists like you, Harshmander, Sandeep Pandey and others, why they couldn't come together for having a hate crime legal cell to protect minorities and especially Muslims when you are
I
so
don't think
much
that's fair, sir. Some of us have come together. I don't think that's fair. I think some of us are doing it in the sense that we may not be doing it in under one platform, but in different areas we are doing it. Like we are doing it in 5 districts. It's very difficult without resources to do it in all the districts of UP. But we have started a cell in 5 districts. We are doing it in 12 districts of Assam. We are doing citizenship work. In 4 districts of Maharashtra, we have started. A lot of it is a question of resources. Even Harsh's group is doing it in some other districts. And we try and coordinate at one level. The point is that groups are doing the extent that they can, But there's been an attack. There's an attack by the state. The kind of thing that Ms. Ilmi was saying to me has been alleged in the media. We were the first victims of this government making all sorts of malicious allegations. Now, Harshmanda's an attack. So you have to face that and you have to continue your work. It's not easy. But many of us have stayed the course and we are still doing it. CJP, my organization, if you just look at our website, we've expanded by leaps and bounds. Incrementally, we have expanded. I mean, our Assam program is unique. Nobody else is doing this kind of work. So the point is, we need to build a nationwide, district-wise legal aid thing, but it takes resources, it takes strength. We have sworn never to take FCRA now. We are raising our money only domestically. So all these are very, very big challenges for us,
Well, you were the target number 1 for the FCRA.
Yeah.
So no doubt. So let me now invite Professor Mohibul Haq, and after his mini talk is over, then few questions will be raised for him, and then we will be open for audience. Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Mohib.